it starts with your husband and you and him getting an agreement, one accord, and saying, listen, if we're going to be in this together, we have to make a plan to protect our children. That's where it
Yeah,
starts.
I agree. I think even biblically, like, I mean, my husband is the one who brought me into the truth. And I mean, it was a very rocky road because again, I grew up in the Baptist church. So that was a very hard thing. And just like you said earlier, which was really fascinating to me, he would listen to you and he joined your academy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, turn it off. Like, it would be so annoying to me. And I look back at that now and I listen to you guys all the time. And I think, what was wrong with me? Like, why was I so deceived? It's still very, again, just eye-opening to me of how, I mean, God is good. He's the only one that woke me up enough to dig into the information for myself to receive the truth, because I was so put out. Again, it wasn't received well because he wasn't very nice in telling me, but I was so into being involved in the church that I couldn't see past anything. So it's just, I don't know, it's just amazing to me to be where I'm at now and think, wow, I have come so far, and I'm so grateful for him, for one, to continue to tell me that I'm pagan. And every time I would get up and get our kids ready, he's like, I don't want our kids to be like this, Molly. You have to wake up. So it's just, I don't know. It's just so, I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for you guys that I can actually have ears to hear, because that is so true with what Jesus says in his Gospels is, for those who have ears to hear, let them hear. And it's like, wow, Lord, thank you for opening my ears so I can hear.
Yeah, look at that. Blessed are your eyes that you can see and your ears that hear. And let me tell you, because there was many who longed to understand and couldn't. And Christ even said, blessed are you. That's why Christ would say, he would drop something clear and says, he that have an ear, let him hear. And seeing what it comes down to, and I'm going to ask you this. Once you are open to hear it, right? Now let me show you something. Let me show you something real quick. Because it's like this. Let me ask you. Once you were able to see it, right, sister?
Yeah.
Once you were able to see it, you started to understand that on this side of it, the elders teaching, that it was out of what? It was out of honesty and concern for the people, according to Christ's gospel. Right? You started to understand that, okay, there's really no angle here. Right? 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 And
I mean, it was just crazy. I'm like, why didn't I see this before? Like, where was that? Why wasn't I here? Like, the traditions of men. Why didn't I see that? Why didn't I ask myself the question, what does that mean? What are traditions of men? And asking myself that.
See? So let me ask you, because I'm interested now, just a little bit. So what was the tipping point for you? What was the tipping point in which you said, you know what? There's something here. Or were you listening to it like so many others do, to try to find something wrong to get your husband back?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he quit going to church with me. And I think that was the biggest thing that was like, he was going with me. And when the preacher would preach, he wouldn't listen. He was reading on along in the Bible. And I looked over at him and I'm like, are you even paying attention? And he's like, well, I mean, there's more to read, Molly. And he would always say, I would say, isn't that a great message? And he'd be like, what did he even teach today? And I'm like, well, you didn't get it? And I was just so frustrated with him, but I desired him to go and to learn and to join small groups with me. And he's like, the biggest thing was, to me, he kept calling me pagan. And I thought, what is that? What is pagan? You know what I mean? Like, I had no clue. I didn't realize, which this is silly because I really did grow up my whole life in church.
Okay.
And I never knew that it didn't say in the Bible that he wasn't born on December 25th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to ask myself those things, like, what is traditions of men? When I read Jeremiah 10:2, I believe, with the tree, I'm like, whoa, what? But in the interim of all of that, all the people that I held dear to my heart that were friends, older women, I would ask them the things he was saying. We went to preacher after preacher, our preacher, another preacher. And I'm like, you have to sit and talk to him. Like, you don't, like, there's no way. And he was showing them things in the Bible, and I'm crying. I'm like in the midst of with these pastors, and he's trying to show them. And the pastor's like, he's all over the place. You know, he doesn't even make sense. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, because these are people, leaders that I looked up to, women that I looked up to. And they were telling me it was a cult, that's false doctrine. And then now my family thinks I'm crazy. 3 years not doing Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving. They literally look at me, and I just, sometimes it's just so tragic because I'm like, why can't you see? So I just pray for my family, again, that Lord, you'll give them eyes to see and ears to hear, and I just pray that for them, because it's one question and I even wrote the pastor. I said, how can all these people be wrong? Like, I told Lover, well, how can all these people be wrong? And he's like, Molly, the path is very wide. And then you go therein, and the path is narrow, and so you find it. And I'm like, whoa, like, it makes sense. Like, those scriptures just are so powerful. And it's just, I don't know, it's just incredible to me how God's word is so revealing. And that's what I told my mom one day. We were, talking, and I'm like, Mom, it's another God. Christmas and Easter, it's other gods. And we that there's only one true and living God, but you're not looking deeper. The information's there. Google it, and then that's it, because it offends her so deeply. She tells me I steal her joy. It's sad, because I want to honor my mom. I tell her that all the time. I want to honor you, but God is first, and it's important. And just like you said before, which it always stands out, and I always say that to people. You said, Jesus knows my heart. He knows my heart. And you said, but do you know his? Do you know his heart? We're not reading. We never read. Never read the Bible. It's so intricately put, as you guys put it. It's very eye-opening. It's amazing. I'm just grateful.
Well, all praise be to the Most High. And it says here in Philippians, the first chapter, right? It says, some indeed preach Christ even of envy and strife, and some also of goodwill. The one preach Christ of contention, not sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my bonds, but the other of love, knowing that I am set for the defense of the gospel. So at the end of it, it has to be in the love of Christ, or the reason Christ was sent. And that's the message that only few find. Broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. And guess what? It reminds me of when I grew up, sister. There was these crazy, scary movies, right? Where it was one called The Devil's Reign. And this innocent family drives into town. All the people are just the greatest people. They help change a tire. They put gas in your car. They're waving and smiling to you. But at night, the whole town came together to worship Satan. They were all devil worshipers with one agenda, to either turn that one person into the pagan way of life to actually become a host for the demon, or this person had to become a sacrifice. Same thing with they keep showing the same narrative over and over again. Wicker Man, with what I think that's Nicolas Cage, Wicker Man, where this police goes to investigate something at an island, and all the people are just so nice. They're farming their own land. They're naturalists. They all come together, family oriented. I mean, they have programs for the children, total order. But then they're all are planning at the end of it to have this guy as a sacrifice to burn him alive while he's investigating something all through the town, all these nice people. But really, he has entered a world of pagans. And what is the messaging? We were born into a world of pagans. It's structured. It's structured. It's nature. It's all the things. It's tradition. It's all the things that we would connect with as good, not knowing the difference between good and evil. And that's why I thank the Most High for the law and the Bible. Because the Bible in of itself, sister, is what? It's absolute. There's no gray areas. It points out all the actions of the earth, these institutions, as well as the governments and who established them. Blessed are your eyes that you see and your ears that you hear, sister, because guess what? We were never the enemy. And I thank the Most High that your husband was able to see and stand to a degree where he could stand in the word, not being a teacher, and confound those that you actually looked up to as those who could guide you towards Christ's kingdom. Let me tell you, your husband, sister, didn't go to a theologian school, but he was able to confound those who did right before you. That was your sign. And I'm also glad that he was patient with you enough, because some people just like to leave the person who don't believe and all that. I don't ascribe to that. I mean, we have to have patience and long suffering, even though there's tough times. And he was patient enough to go through it with you, and and look at where we are. You have the last word, and then I'm going for the day. You have a great Sabbath.
Nope. I'm just so grateful. And yes, my husband, he is amazing. We had that. It was a year. It was a little over a year. I stayed in the church, and he didn't. He stood his ground, and he was placed in my life for a reason, not only to be my lover, but somebody that really, really, helped me to have a better relationship with the Lord and being able to understand, his truth, and really that we can follow his laws, statutes, and commandments, and we can sin not. So I appreciate you. I thank you, and so very much.
Well, thank you, and may the Most High be with you, and have a great Sabbath. Tell your husband I said hello. All right?
I will.
All right. Shalom.
Thank you.
All right.
Draw the line.